Hey, deserving listeners, it's just me today. I thought I would talk about mental illness and gender, mostly because I received an email from famous patron Lyndon asking me to talk about it. And at first I thought, I don't know if I have much to say about it, but then I did some research and I discovered, as usual, I have a lot of things to say about it. So, and just at the caveat moving forward, I'm already sort of realizing that this entire episode is going to be gender binary. The research and the literature is 99.99999% based on gender binary language. So I'm not going to be talking about trans people. I'm not going to be talking about gender fluid people, queer people. I'm guessing in another 20 to 30 years, we'll have more data, better data regarding trans and non-binary gender-related mental illness facts. So I apologize for that on behalf of my industry. Okay, before moving forward, I just want to ask you a few questions. I want you to think about something. I want you to picture in your mind a depressed human being. That person is depressed, they're crying all the time, or maybe they just lack motivation and they're not crying all the time. They're down, they have a hard time getting up to go to work, they frequently have low self-esteem. Okay, now freeze that person in your mind. Is that person a man or a woman or some other gender? What gender do you picture in your mind? Now, for some of you, you're going to be thinking about a woman, and for some of you, you'll be thinking about some other gender. So I want you to think about that. Now, think about someone with, and just free associate with me on this, think about someone with schizophrenia. Someone has schizophrenia. They're hallucinating. They're talking to themselves. They are, they have disorganized thoughts. They might be hospitalized. They might even be homeless. Okay. Is that person, what gender is that person? Okay. Now picture someone who has antisocial personality disorder. They commit a lot of crimes. They're violent. They manipulate other people. Okay. What gender is that person? Now think about someone with an alcohol problem, someone who drinks every night or every day, all day. What gender is that person? Now some of you might be saying, well, I don't know. I don't really attribute either gender. Some of you might be thinking, oh, actually, when I think of someone with an alcohol problem, I think of this sort of gender. Okay, now think of a kid in school, 10 years old, with ADHD. That person has been diagnosed with ADHD. Is that a boy or a girl or some other gender? Now, for some of you, you'll have definite genders that you'll assign to these disorders. And for some of you, you won't. I don't know. But the question I have is, why do we have a bias about particular disorders? Is it accurate? Are some disorders more likely to be present in one gender or another? Now, why is it that some disorders are associated with men and some are associated with women? Is that accurate? Are there gender differences? And if there are gender differences, why are there gender differences? Well, that's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to provide some data, some facts regarding different diagnoses and the prevalence rates between men and women. I'm going to talk about some of the challenges to research. I'm going to talk about why. And so long story short, in a nutshell, there are differences when they study men and women between different mental illnesses. Some are more prevalent among men, some are more prevalent among women. And so I'm going to talk about why that would be. Cultural reasons, biological reasons, and clinician reasons. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Welcome to the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and I'm also a professor. This episode is just for patrons of the podcast. So if you're listening to this and you're not a patron of the podcast yet, this episode will end before the content begins. If you want to hear the full episode, you have to become a patron of the podcast by going to patreon.com. Become a patron and you'll get access to hundreds of patron-exclusive episodes in which we do deep dives into various topics. And when you become a patron, you don't have to listen to the vast majority of commercials. And remember that a portion of your monthly pledge goes towards various charities that we support.